Okay. All right. So as just mentioned, I'm going to be recording this session. So you should receive a copy of the recording either by the end of the day or first thing tomorrow. If you do not receive a copy, it's simply because I didn't get your name written down. You can just shoot me an email if you don't receive something by tomorrow morning, and I'll make sure that you get a copy. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. So this is how today's meeting is going to work. We've got a PowerPoint presentation that'll take roughly 30 minutes to get through. At the conclusion of the presentation, we'll open it up for questions. Having said that, this presentation is very informal, and you're certainly welcome to ask questions at any point throughout the presentation. If you do have a question that is answered a little bit later in the presentation, we may ask to actually put off that question for a moment or two before we get to that, until we get to that section. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Ebony Herbert Harris with us today. Dr. Harris is the director of the MEPN program. She's going to be giving us the details about the MEPN program, discussing logistics and answering your questions. So welcome, Dr. Harris.
Thank you.
All right. And as I said, this information is being recorded and I'll be sharing that shortly. So real quick, before we get into the meat of the presentation, I want to do a real quick sound check. This may sound kind of silly, but if you can't hear me, please either add a chat note or speak up vocally. I'm assuming everyone can hear, but just in case you can't, want to get a copy of that. So I'm not hearing anything, not seeing anything, so I'm assuming we're good to go there. And again, you are certainly welcome to type questions in the chat box or just say them audibly when we get to the appropriate place. So this is the agenda for today's session. Some of the topics that we talk about are going to be true across all nursing programs, and some are going to be specific to the USC College of Nursing. You'll see MEPN written several different places throughout the presentation. The official title of our program is Master's Entry to Practice Nursing, but we'll be using the abbreviation MEPN throughout the presentation. Before we get started, does anybody have any specific questions? And when we get to the appropriate part of the presentation, we'll make sure we address them. So now's your time before we get started. Any specific questions before we get started?
I have one.
Go ahead.
My name's Allie Morgan Stanton, and I have a couple prerequisite classes that I will be taking over the summer and in the fall. And I was wondering if that will stop my application from being considered this cycle.
Okay. Allie Morgan, that's a great question, and welcome. It's nice to actually put a face with a name. We've actually got that addressed in a couple slides, so I'm going to put that on pause right now. I'm assuming we'll have a few more folks join us, so instead of giving the answer a couple different times, we'll wait, but that's a great question, and we do have that addressed a little bit later on, so thank you for asking that. All right?
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before we get started?
Hi. Oh.
Okay, looks like Ebony. Go ahead, Ebony.
Hi. What % of your program are non-traditional, and what type of support does the program give to those students?
Okay, that's a great question also. I'm going to write that one down because that one specifically is not addressed. But when we get to the appropriate place, we will make sure we answer that as well. Okay. And Wendy, I think you had a question.
Yes, hi, Wendy Jackman. I have a question about, and I'm sure that you will cover something of it in the required for admission section, but in particular, the GPA requirements, in particular, if that is just considered for the bachelor's GPA, or if the current GPA, because I'm currently taking many classes, would be considered. And of course, that falls along the lines with, you know, kind of life circumstances during certain things.
Great question. We do have that address, so we'll make sure we hit that when we get to that stage as well, but great question. I'll ask one other, anybody have one more question they want to throw out there before we get started?
Hi, I had a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me see if I can do the. Here we go. Sorry, I'm Laura Koch, and I had a question about if the classes are in person or if they're online, or If
The
how
format
that
of the
would go.
classes. Great question, and we do have that. So yeah, you've had some great questions so far. It does sound like most of these are going to be addressed. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, if there's
Thank you.
anything that's not addressed, feel free to ask questions at that time. As I said earlier, this is very informal, and you're certainly welcome to answer any questions as we go through the presentation. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So before we get started, we did want to draw attention to the fact that earlier this year, the U.S. News and World Report named us the #1 university for online graduate nursing programs. And they specifically identified our FNP program and our nursing administration program, as well as our services for veterans. This is the seventh consecutive year we've been in the top 10 of their rankings. Now, I realize the majority of the MEPN program is not online, but I did think it was important for you all to see what kind of reputation USC has. So, all right, let's continue. So what is the MEPN program? At this point, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Harris, and she's going to give us more of an overview of the program. So welcome, Dr. Harris.
Thank you. So welcome, everybody. It's good to see some faces, some of the faces, and here's some of you guys. Thank you for your interest in the program. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what is an MEPN program. In fact, I think I've answered this question so much that I am a little bit blue in the face. But basically, the Master's Entry to Practice in Nursing is a program designed for students who have a bachelor's degree in some other field than nursing. So if you had a BSN, this would not be the appropriate program for you to apply to. But if you have any other degree, bachelor's degree in any other area, this is an appropriate program. The purpose of the program is for you to get skills and the experience and also the critical thinking knowledge necessary to become a nurse, a registered nurse. At the end of our program, you're eligible to sit for NCLEX, which is the certifying exam for nurses. And you will possess a master's, a generic master's of science in nursing degree. There is opportunity for you to do some additional specialization after you finish the degree. I will tell you though, in the program, you will have some opportunities to take some electives and to do some other courses outside of the core courses, but it's pretty packed into the 5 semesters, 5 consecutive semesters. So it's you start and you don't break until you're finished. So it makes it is a lot of good in that, but it may feel a little bit, oh my goodness, at first. And then I want to point out that we are the only program like this in the state. There are other masters of nursing programs, but all of them require you to have a bachelor's of science in nursing before progressing. So, so that kind of gives a little bit of an overview of what is an MEPN program. So often answer this question as well about who should potentially get an MEPN degree. And of course, obviously I said that all students who have, or all potential students who have a bachelor's degree in some area are eligible to apply. That said, I will say that students who usually do well have a strong background in some sciences areas. But that doesn't mean that we haven't had students from all other areas who are not being very successful this semester. So there's not a preference given to science background individuals who want to apply, as long as they have successfully completed their prerequisites courses. But I will say a lot of times those are the majority of students who we have applied that have backgrounds in biology, chemistry, I don't know, exercise science, public health, trying to think of all the areas that I've seen a lot of applications come from. But we've also had lots of liberal arts degrees as well. It's really important that you actually want to be a nurse as well. So I think many of you wouldn't be sitting right here or listening to this presentation if you weren't curious or interested to be a nurse or have already started to pursue avenues to become a nurse. So that would be key. You want to actually be and work as a nurse. And then other non-nursing careers, like if you have if you have or are working maybe as a nurse tech or as a pharmacy tech or as a something in the healthcare field, often this degree is a good spot for you to advance your career and maybe change course slightly in healthcare. So what all is included when you start in the program? I've already said really quickly that this program is 5 semesters total. So you take about 23 classes that equals about 76 credits. There are both didactic, which means like sit in person class, and for lecture and activities. And then there also are clinical courses where you'll be going to spend time in a medical facility, be that hospital, be that outpatient facility, to receive some training. We have on-campus classes. So this, somebody I think asked that question, is this an online program or is this a face-to-face program? We consider this a face-to-face program. So there are online classes within the program. So for example, let me give you just a quick example. This upcoming semester in the summer, students will be taking 2 clinical courses for which they'll come to class, sit in class, get lecture, learn about those topic areas, and then they will go on a different day to the facility and actually get to practice some of the skills and knowledge that they are learning. Then they are taking 3 online classes where they don't have any commitment to come to campus for those things, other than maybe a final exam. A lot of times the big major midterms or finals we will give in person rather than virtually, but you're already supposed to be available on campus anyway. So I would consider this program somewhat of a hybrid. There are a lot of online classes built in for flexibility and with some on-campus responsibilities. And your clinical facilities are within the area of Columbia. So there is up to, I think, a 75 mile, I might be quoting that wrong, it might be 60-mile radius that we are allowed to assign our hospital facilities for students to do clinicals at. So I would say the furthest from Columbia that we have had a facility at one time would be like Aiken. But we primarily use that facility for, oh, excuse me, I'm saying Aiken, Augusta, for your final rotations, not in the very beginning. All the other ones are usually right here in the Columbia area within a 15-20 minute drive of campus. There are 784 clinical hours that were required in the course, and those are one-to-one, actual 784 hours in a clinical facility spread over your 5 semesters. And then you do have some simulation hours. So we have a simulation lab in the first floor of our building that we will be using. It's been kind of we used it a lot actually this semester because there were a lot of skills that students were needing to learn and practice. And hopefully now we are moving away from COVID and we can move more into being more face-to-face with our simulation. So you will have simulation hours in the lab for each course. And it won't be the whole course, but each clinical course usually does have some level of simulation built into it. All right, and so prerequisites, we also get a lot of questions. I say we, I'm talking about Scott and I, lots of questions about what are the prerequisites. So we have them listed here. What you see in parentheses is the USC course. So if you were a student at USC, that is the course we would recommend for you to take. That is the exact course that has exact information Now, I will say there are some courses that may be a higher level, like let's say you're a biology major. You probably took something a little bit more in depth than anatomy and physiology 1 and 2, and maybe a little bit higher than the first level of microbiology, and that's okay. So there may be some of you who, depending on your degree plan, have sent information to Mr. Ranges about does this course count, because I know it's higher than anatomy and physiology 1. And then I'll review syllabi to ensure that it is covered with information that we require you to bring forward. Now, one other thing that I really want to kind of insert here about prerequisites and its importance. Yes, they are sort of a checkbox to just be eligible to get into the program. But also what will be important for you as graduate students to be cognizant of and to know for yourself is what level did you retain from taking those courses? What can you sort of remember or bring forward? Because some of that information is really important, like knowing human anatomy, knowing some basic physiology, knowing the stages of development. Those are kind of important and things that our faculty, when we start some of those courses, assume that you already have that knowledge and that you are bringing it forward. And they may talk briefly about it, but they don't spend the whole course talking about it. They layer onto that. And all of our courses in the program are layered. So each semester, whereas in a lot of undergraduate programs, you may learn one thing and then you learn and dump and move on to the next course, and it starts all over and it's all brand new, and you learn and you dump. All of the courses are subsequential and they build on each other. So everything you will be learning will help you in the next step. So it's really important that, and faculty are really good about trying to tell you this is important to remember going forward, because you're going to use it as you move forward. So for those prerequisite courses, you need to earn at least a C or better in the course for it to be considered as acceptable for application. And it needs to be completed within the last 10 years. And that is I don't want to say the 10 years is flexible. 10 years is not flexible, but when I say flexible, I mean, you probably should be considering, if I had it more than 10 years ago and I have not been working, or 10 years ago, let's say, and I have not been working in something that I use anatomy and physiology every day, well, it might be beneficial to you to have some sort of refresher before you enter into a program where you're going to be using anatomy and physiology. So consider that. Not saying you need to retake all courses if you had it 6 or 7 years ago, but consider what level and what you remember about your courses when you're moving forward.
Yeah, I've actually recently spoken with some of the students, and they said if you had anatomy and physiology more than a year ago, you really need to review it. So, all right. I know that we've covered a lot of content about the program fairly quickly. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions about the specific format of the courses or prerequisites or anything of that nature?
I have a quick question.
Wow, okay.
I'm Kayla Hinton. I'm currently enrolled in Psych 420 with USC for Maymester, but the name doesn't match. I just want to verify it's the same class.
Yes, ma'am. It's
okay, great.
Human Growth and Development is kind of the internal name, but as long as it's
okay.
USC for the Psych 420, you're fine. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome, thank you.
Good,
yeah, that's what we find is the most. That's our title, because we're like, that's what we want you to come out of it with.
Good.
This is Lauren Temple. I have a question. I had spoken to Scott about this already, but I just wanted to, I guess, kind of reiterate. I am taking 3 of those prereqs in the summer at Midlands Tech, and then the other 2 in the fall at Midlands Tech. As long as those classes, I pass them with a C or better, will I still be eligible for the program to start in spring of 2022?
That is correct.
Okay.
I will tell you though, it is very important, like you need to be successful, but it's very important that you're really getting a mastery level of those courses in order to be able to start.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I do just want to emphasize what Dr. Harris just said there. It's not just to check the box. Yes, I completed the course, but you want to do as well as you can in the course and answer the material, attain as much of the material as possible. One of the things we're going to look at in the application process is your GPA and your grades. And specifically, we're going to look at these grades. How did you do most recently in these courses? So, okay, good. Any other questions before we move on?
Yeah,
Yes.
I actually have a question. This is Tisha Smith.
Go ahead.
And my question is, as far as just, I know you said you go as far out as Augusta, but do you guys have a USC in Lancaster? Do you think any of the classes would be there, or as far as just,
Okay,
I guess,
good question.
rotation for clinical?
Yeah, there are several clinical, or I'm sorry, there are several regional campuses throughout the state. However, this program is only offered through the USC Columbia campus. So you would not have the opportunity to take any of these courses at USC Aiken, USC Beaufort, USC Upstate. It would only either be on the USC Columbia campus or online.
Got it. Thank you.
Good. Who else?
Hey, I had a quick question. This is Catherine Dargan. For the anatomy and physiology requirements, do y'all accept the extra science versions of those from USC?
Yes, we do. Yeah, the exercise, if you took those in your exercise science program, that's fine. I don't have those numbers right in front of me right this minute, but yes, as long as you did it here, yes, that's fine.
Perfect.
Quick question.
So, Wendy Jack.
Go ahead, Wendy, and then Andrew, I think.
And I just want to make sure with the human growth and development, it's been over 10 years, I believe, since I've taken that course, but I did get my bachelor's of science in psychology. So I've taken a couple hundred hours, I think, in psychology.
Yeah, so if there's a question, like if you have a course that you're worried about, is that going to be sufficient, please just forward or send that inquiry to Scott or Mr. Ranges, and he will, if I haven't already said something about XYZ, he'll make sure we connect to ensure that you are covered for what you need. There may be just a few more questions we might need to ask you personally to make sure that you're going to be successful related to that content. Okay.
Andrew, go ahead.
Sure thing, thanks. It's a two-part question here. So the first being that most of the classes I completed over 10 years ago, and I've recently completed them. How does the GPA calculation works there? And the second part of my question is, I have planned for summer medical terminology as a way to prepare myself. The grades, however, won't be posted until I think July 4th. So how does that work?
Okay, I'll go ahead and take this. So when calculating the GPA, what we're going to do is we're going to determine a GPA for any course that you've ever taken. Whether it was, you took an English 101 course when you were dual enrolled in high school, or during your undergraduate program, you might have taken a class during the summer closer to home, something like that. Any courses that you've taken up to this point are going to calculate into your overall GPA. Now, if you've retaken one or two courses, those grades will actually appear once for the initial time and once for the makeup time, unless you went to a program or a school that had like grade forgiveness and the first grade was removed from your GPA. Now, I will say that if we're kind of on the fence, we're also going to look at your most current grades and see, okay, what did you do most recently in this course? Or if this is someone who maybe got a C the first time they took the course and then retook it and got an A or A minus, to us, that shows some tenacity and ability to work hard and do better. So, that's going to hopefully make a positive impression. So, Dr. Harris, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it was about the medical terminology course. So it's not a requirement for the prerequisites, but I do think that's an excellent plan. If you've already taken all the other courses, you're eligible to apply then. But I think it's an excellent plan to prepare you for a program like this. Because I think that's sometimes what people will say, well, gosh, there were so many words, I didn't know what they meant. And of course, then you have to look them up. But and not saying that you're going to be, but being a nurse or being in medicine, the field of medicine, period, it is somewhat of a new language for many people. And so that, I think that's a great plan to try to take that class this summer. Unless you fail the class, I don't think it should impact your ability to be admitted.
All right. Well, we've had some great questions, but I tell you what, let's continue on, get through the rest of the presentation, and then the final portion will be open for questions as well. So thank you everyone who's had a question so far. So now we move on to the admission part. So to be eligible for the program, you have to successfully completed a bachelor's degree from a nationally accredited program. Typically, we're looking for applicants who have an overall GPA of 3.0 or higher in all prior coursework. And as previously mentioned, we'll do a cumulative GPA of everything you've taken so far. You know, again, we're looking for applicants who have a 3.0 or higher GPA. It's possible that, you know, maybe initially you did one program, weren't real successful, or maybe you were too immature when you first went away to college. And once you kind of buckled down and figured out what you want to do, you were more successful. We'll look at that. I will say that it is a competitive program to get into. And last year, the average GPA of admitted students was probably closer to about a 3.3. But again, that's an average. So that means that there's people above that and below that. We are looking for applicants who have successfully graduated from a program and completed the prerequisites. You know, that we can, on exception, look at people who maybe are still taking the prerequisite courses. We really would prefer that you, both graduated and completed the prerequisites by the application deadline. And we're going to give that in just a minute. And finally, anybody who's admitted will be required to get the BLS certification prior to the start of the program. Basic life support training takes about 3 to 4 hours to complete, and you can get it done in one day. After you find out your admission status, you should have about 2 months or more to get this completed. And you know, we'll share your admission status as soon as possible, and also give you some recommendations about potentially where you can get this completed. But just wanted to let everybody know that in advance, if you are admitted, the BLS certification is something you need to do prior to the start of the program. Okay. And again, good idea. If you're not speaking, go ahead and mute your microphone. That way we don't have a lot of background noise or echo, that sort of thing. So anyone who's interested in the program must submit an online application through the graduate school. The application includes both a goal statement and a current copy of your CV or resume. Your personal statement should describe why you're interested in becoming a nurse and indicate how the program will advance your professional goals. If there's any unique circumstances in your academic or career background, this would certainly be the appropriate place to include that information. Also, if you have any experience working in a healthcare setting, certainly encourage you to include that information here. Now, we do request that you keep your personal statement brief, probably to about 2 pages or less. But you know, this is an opportunity for you to tell us about yourself and share details and explain things that maybe might not be that we can get from your resume. You'll also need to include 3 recommendations from individuals who are masters or doctorally prepared. So what will happen is when you complete the application, you'll list the name and email address of 3 references. They will get a link to a recommendation form. They will complete that link and submit it. Everything from them is electronic. So you don't need to physically collect a recommendation letter from them. Now, periodically we'll have people ask, well, I've got a supervisor or somebody else who can provide a great recommendation for me, but they don't have a master's or doctorate. You're certainly welcome to include an additional recommendation from someone who doesn't have a master's or a doctorate, but just understand that it won't count as one of the 3 required recommendations that have that. So if you have a supervisor or someone else who you want to include, that's fine. Just realize that you will have to have an additional recommendation because we do need those 3 from individuals with master's or higher. We also need to receive copies of all transcripts from anywhere that you receive college credit. Again, whether it's one course when you were in high school, graduate credit, undergraduate credit, anything that you've ever gotten credit for. So encourage you to include that. You are certainly welcome to upload unofficial copies of your transcripts with your application. If you're admitted, we'll need to get official copies at that point. And then as you can see there, we do not require either GRE or any other standardized test scores. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, most of these items can be uploaded with your application. Some of them, for example, the personal statement, the resume, and one or two other things, you have to upload them before you'd be able to submit your application. But certainly do encourage you to upload as much as you can with your application before you submit it. Once you submit your application, you won't be able to edit it or make any changes at all, but you will be able to forward information to the graduate school to be added to your application. Certainly do encourage you to submit your application before the deadline. It can take a week or more for some of the extra items such as transcripts and recommendations, things like that, to come in. So the earlier you submit your application, the more time you have for any missing items to arrive. If you wait to the last minute, first of all, there's going to be a large back pile of information that the graduate school has to process because everybody applies at the last minute, and it's going to take longer for everything to get processed. Also, that'll give you less time to get any missing items in. Once you do submit your application, we will follow up with you and let you know, yes, we've got your application. Here's some missing items that you may have, or yes, your application is complete and it's been sent to the department for review. All right, for the application deadlines, as you can see here, the program only admits students to start during the spring semester. And for us, the spring semester starts in January. Applications will actually open this Saturday, May 1st, and they'll remain open through September 1st. And again, as I just said, do encourage you to submit your application well before the deadline so that everything has time to get processed, and also you have time to get any outstanding items submitted. As you can see, classes will start January 10th, 2022. Okay. As referenced already, most items can be uploaded with your application. Any official items that you're sending, for example, transcripts, those should be mailed to the address listed to the graduate school here. After you submit your application, you can log back in and see what items have been added to your application. Also, if you have items that you want to add after your application is submitted, you can send them to that email address there. Or if you have a school that can send transcripts electronically, they can send it to that email address as well. Again, please be aware it may take a week or more for the different application materials to be processed. And again, you can log back in at any time to see what's arrived in the process, and we will let you know when your application is complete and gets set for review. We've included some links here that we thought might be useful. The first is the link to the College of Nursing website, specifically to the MEPN program webpage. The second link is to the university transfer table. This is something you would use if you went somewhere other than USC and you want to check your prerequisite courses to see if they're equivalent to our courses. So let's say that you went to Penn State University, you would go to the transfer table, look up Pennsylvania, then look at Penn State, and look at the course number according to the Penn State transcript, and then see what's equivalent to the USC transcript. And hopefully it's the equivalent numbers and works out there. If you look up a class and for some reason it's not listed on the transfer table, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's non-transferable. It just simply means that it has never been reviewed yet. So if that's the case, send us a copy of the syllabus. We can review it and get back with you to determine whether or not that would be an acceptable prerequisite course. Okay, and do you understand that that can take a week or more for that to be reviewed and for us to make some decisions regarding that. Okay, and then the final link there is simply the link to the graduate school application. All right, we have covered a whole lot of information in a fairly short period of time. Now it's your time for questions. Now, one of the questions we had from earlier is about non-traditional students and the support for them. So Dr. Harris, I'm gonna let you address that one.
Yeah, so I was trying to write that down a little bit too. I'm a little confused about maybe the question because all of our students are considered non-traditional. So in the sense of for nursing, because this is a non-traditional path to nursing. But in the undergraduate program, we do have what you may call non-traditional students, meaning like They may be older or have families. So maybe can you give me a description, because what I consider non-traditional for graduate versus undergraduate students are maybe slightly different. Who was that? I think Ebony asked that question.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Harris. This is
Sure.
Ebony Toussaint. When I said non-traditional, I just meant people that with different previous degrees or different career pathways, and also age was a factor that I was considering also, and also just families or children. A lot of the stuff I've seen out there has been pretty negative towards people that are what my definition of non-traditional, meaning older with families, children, and second career type degree. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. So I do think that most of that is related to trying to come into a pretty traditional program, a bachelor's program or associate's program, maybe. So for the master's entry, you can kind of look at it like a sort of an accelerated program. Typically, we don't encourage students to work any more than like a maximum of 20 hours a week. So that is something that students kind of need to plan around or about, because you need time for thinking and processing. So there's a lot of new information coming at you. And I feel like having that time to just stop and process and think. Yeah, you might have some time. You might not be sitting in a classroom every single hour of the week, or you might not be at the hospital every single hour of the week. But I do think you need to set aside some time to just absorb and think and process and study. So that's one. Some of the resources, a lot of times our faculty have been really good about setting up, not study groups, but more so review sessions, open office hour. I don't mean open office hours as in my door is open, but more so, hey, I'm gonna be in room XYZ at 10 a.m. I will stay there till 11 a.m. We will review all the topics that you think are muddy. So it's more of a group office hour rather than I gotta find my professor every Tuesday at this time. They kind of will work with their group of students to find out what their availability looks like. And that might mean that because class is all day on Monday and Tuesday, that Tuesday afternoon, after classes are over, they'll schedule it so that everybody doesn't have to make a plan to come back on campus on another day. Something else that we've kind of tried to arrange, obviously we're still kind of working on that, but trying to keep class days to 2 to 3 days of the week so that there is a little more flexibility in your scheduling. So for this last spring that we're finishing up now, they had clinicals on Monday and they had classes on Tuesday and Wednesday. So that left Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for study and for maybe arranging schedules with work and that sort of thing. And class typically doesn't last is sometime between regular working like 9 to 5, maybe 8 to 5, I'll say hours. We don't usually have late evening classes, but clinical can be on a typical hospital schedule. So 7A to 3P or 7A to 7 p.m. And sometimes there are evening clinicals too, like a 1P to 9 p.m. we've had also before. So we're at the mercy of the hospital as to what they provide for us. But we usually are able to schedule it. We're working on some other resources as well. We do have a Carolina cupboard. I say cupboard, you think about like a kitchen cupboard. They do have food items, but they also have lots of other things. So sometimes there are resources, maybe you needed to you're trying to figure out how can I potentially study? I got to pick the kid up by X time, but there's an after school program. They might be able to work on some sort of grant or scholarship to maybe provide the resources for that, or resources for books, or resources for, there's been all kinds of different things that they have been able to help students with to try to make things run a little bit smoother. So it is sort of a give and take. There are, lots of support systems. We do have many opportunities for involvement professionally at the college. But then again, it's not a requirement. It's just something that I think also helps students to be successful if they get involved.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the very thorough answer. I think in addition to that, my other question was for students that are older and have had different career pathways. Are you only considering transcripts from bachelor degree programs or from all schools attended, whether master or doctoral level?
What I think is, and Scott, you can totally tell me I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the graduate school is calculating it on all degrees obtained.
Yes, correct. Yeah. All right, we had someone submit a question via chat. So in a previous program, they actually occasionally had some lectures or other requirements on a weekend. Are there going to be any requirements outside of clinicals that could potentially be on a weekend?
So with your online classes, you may be listening to a lecture on a weekend, but the lectures are usually posted for our online classes. And it's a reason why we've won many awards for being in the top 10 in the nation for our online offerings, is we make them pretty standard and similar. Now, what the content is varies, but how they're structured and set up, there's not a lot of guesswork in that. So the lectures usually are, everything for that week is usually posted at the beginning of the week. Our weeks usually start on Mondays and go through Sundays. And you have your own time to get through it. Many faculty also will post up to 2-3 weeks ahead, opened. So if you wanted to work ahead, you could, but sometimes I'm not saying everybody is that way, but sometimes they're at a week at a time. But for the most part, most people try to have a couple weeks up at a time for those who want to work ahead. So the weekends is up to you, but we typically don't have clinical offerings on the weekends because of how it's structured and what the facilities offer us. Now, I will tell you, when you get to your final couple semesters and you are in the courses where they're like your seminal courses, you're going to be really getting prepared to be a nurse. So you're going to start working shifts like a nurse with one nurse or one preceptor instead of in a group. You start in a group and then you move to one preceptor at the end of the program. When you're doing that, you usually work that nurse's schedule. So if she works a Saturday or a Sunday, well, you might be working a Saturday or a Sunday. That's at the very end of the program. All the way else through the program, the first 4 semesters, you will be in class or have clinical somewhere between Monday and Friday. There was another question in the chat too. But,
yeah, the chat question was, where can you get BLS certification and how long does that take? Again, BLS certification, there's several different options for that. You could, hospital settings, other healthcare institutions. Typically, you can get that knocked out either in a morning or an afternoon, 3, 4, maybe 5 hours. Again, once you're admitted, we would share details about some of the different offerings available, but that's not something you really need to worry about until after you're admitted to the program.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, how are you doing? My name is Joyelle Tyler. I have a question with the class loads. I know it's like 5 classes per semester, and you say that the classes range from Tuesday to Thursday, I think, or it's just Tuesday and Thursday?
Oh, it depends. There's not a specific class day. That changes each semester because of classroom availability, clinical site availability. So I can't say it's a specific day, but go ahead.
Okay, but it's more than one class during that day. Am I correct?
It may be more than one class during that day. So like, here's an example to give you perspective. For the spring semester, they had 2 classes on Tuesday, 2 classes on Wednesday.
Gotcha. And also, okay, thank you. And I also have one more question. As far as the program is concerned, are you allowed to stay on campus? Is that available?
There's not truthfully great housing available on campus for graduate students. Now, I will say that there's been a lot of building, student housing wise, apartment wise around campus. So that there's many, many options there. There are just not many on-campus facilities available for graduate students. And truthfully, they're not something you'd want to stay in. It's really not that nice. You can get something much nicer, sometimes even closer at about the same rate. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. So,
I
all
have
right.
a question.
Got another chat question, then we'll get back to the audible question. So the chat question is, when looking at job applications, many of the positions list a BSN as a requirement. Does having an MSN satisfy that? Dr. Harris, you want to answer that?
Sure. So yes, ultimately, because you cannot have an MSN without, basically a BSN is the generally accepted entry to take NCLEX. And so they are assuming that if you are applying for a nurse practitioner program, that you are functioning as a nurse, have experience as a nurse, and have successfully passed NCLEX. The reason why they specify BSN is because the other pathway to a nurse is through an associate's degree. And most nurse practitioner, well, all nurse practitioner programs are either master's level or doctoral level. And so you have to have, in order to enter into a master's level or a doctoral level, you have to have the bachelor's first, at least the bachelor's first. So if you were to finish our program with the MEPN and have a master's of science in nursing, you would be eligible to apply to a nurse practitioner program in the future, provided you have experience. So that is a question that we get a lot. Can I just go into an NP program when I finish? No, the intent is all NP programs require some registered nurse experience. So you will be working as a registered nurse for a time period before you're eligible to apply to NP programs.
Thank you. And I'll also say that some of the different healthcare organizations, if you're starting with an MSN, you might actually start at a little bit higher salary than someone starting with a BSN. So that's another perk. Ariana, I think you may have had a question.
Yes, I was just wondering what the acceptance rate is for this program, and like how many applicants did you receive?
Sure. Great question. Great question. So last year we had 57 applicants, and every year we anticipate admitting 32 students. Truthfully, I expect there to be more applicants this year. On this event right now, I saw at one point we had 36 participants. So if everyone applied, not everyone would get admitted, simply because it is a competitive program to get into. So it's going to be about half or so, but a lot of it just depends on how many applications we get. So, all right, I had another chat question. What is the cost of the program? So the current cost of the program for in-state students, tuition is $770 per credit hour. For out-of-state students, it's $1438 per credit hour. Now, I'm not going to say that it necessarily happens every year like this, but one of the nice things the program did this year to get the folks started off right, since it was the first class, is everybody got a $200 credit, and they could use that money either to purchase books or scrubs or other equipment and supplies they would need for the program. So that was a nice little perk. Also, the college itself has many scholarships that it offers to students. Last year we gave over $500,000 in scholarships, and that's everything from undergraduate students up through doctoral students. And one of the nice perks of that for the out-of-state students, if you reach a certain threshold of financial aid, then your tuition gets reduced to near in-state rate.
I have a question in regards to the competitive nature of the program. For those, well, I'll back up a little bit. For applicants who existingly also have a graduate degree, and the calculation of all courses taken, I could predict a scenario with me where it may drop my GPA a bit, right? Are there considerations for those who have a graduate degree in terms of competitiveness there, or?
The GPA is just one part of the application process. So let's not get too bogged down and focused on that. That's just one of the part, but Dr. Harris, I'll let you kind of address that.
Sure. So I know everybody is concerned about GPA, and the GPA requirement is partially something that we're interested in, but also it's not the full picture. Some of what we're held to with the GPA is related to what the graduate school says. So the graduate school controls that ship. And they set the bar at 3.0 minimum. Now, we are allowed to admit some below with their total GPA below 3.0. Yes, 3.0. I was about to say 3.9. Not that. Below 3.0. But there are some other requirements with that. So what I would say is don't be as concerned about that because that's not the be all end all for decision making regarding admission. You know, the fact that if you do have another graduate degree, the fact that you've completed another graduate degree successfully says something as well. So much more of a look at all pieces rather than in most undergraduate programs, they'll just be like, well, you didn't meet that, so next. The one thing you didn't meet that, so next is prerequisites. You have to have the prerequisites completed and successfully completed in order to be admitted.
Right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Harris, but you know, I think the things that the admission committee probably looks the most closely at are, you know, the GPA is part of it, but not just the grades, what specific courses you had and how you did in specific courses, your goal statement, why you want to become a nurse, your recommendations, and your work experience. Yeah. All right. Another online question here. Some programs require that you have insurance. Does USC require that? Yes, if you're a full-time student, you do have to have insurance. Also, this is a healthcare field, so that's a requirement as well. You are certainly welcome to have outside insurance, or if you don't have outside insurance, you're certainly welcome to purchase USC insurance, but purchasing USC insurance is not required. What's required is that you have some sort of insurance. Also have the question here, does the program favor prior USC undergraduates? Not necessarily. We're looking for the strongest applicants, and if they're from USC, that's wonderful, but you know, again, we're looking for the strongest applicants and the people who we think can be most successful in the program. So, all right, other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I have a question. I currently work at one of the local hospitals here in Columbia. So as far as, I guess, like clinic goes, how does that work?
You're talking about clinicals?
Yeah, clinicals, like if I work at one of the local hospitals here, if I was accepted to the program, will I be able to do clinics at the hospital I work at, or will it be at another facility?
So we have many students who are employed locally, but we do not place them in clinicals based on their employment. In fact, we prefer that each student has an opportunity to see clinical in all of the different facilities that we have sites available. That doesn't always happen, but we try to make sure that happens so that you have a varied experience and you can see things things are a little bit different if you've worked at more than one hospital or more than one facility and how they do it. There is some standardized processes, but sometimes seeing it a little bit differently is helpful in molding your practice going forward. So we don't do any preference related to where you work. Vicky, I think has her hand up, and Laura.
Yes. And hello, my name is Jimbo, but this might be a bit of a weird one. Some of the people that are writing my letters of recommendation let me know that they would not be able to write it until a little bit later on. So would it be okay for me to go ahead and submit my application like close to the 1st and then have them send in the letters, the letters of recommendation after, or should I just wait until everything's together and then send it in?
Great question, Vicki. So again, for the recommendations themselves, what you'll do is when you complete the application, you'll list their name and email address. They'll get a link so they can complete our application, or I'm sorry, our recommendation form online and submit it online. Please do not wait for the recommendations all to be submitted before submitting your application, because that'll actually slow down the process. So, you know, if they've indicated they can't get to it during May, that's fine. Go ahead and submit your application. And they've got until September 1st to get it submitted. So you've got plenty of time there, so don't worry about that. Now, if somebody wants to write a letter of recommendation, they're certainly welcome to do that and upload that with the recommendation form, but we really do need that recommendation form whenever possible. So, good. Thank you, Vicki. All right, looks like Laura's got her hand up.
Yes, hi. So I'm Laura Paris, but I have a question. Based on people who have done this program, what was your NCLEX passage rate?
Can you say that again, please?
The NCLEX passage rate?
Oh, okay. Actually, our very first class just started this past January. So we haven't had a graduating class to tell what the pass rate is. So I can't give that. Now, I will say that the university or the College of Nursing has a very good record of NCLEX pass rate. I believe the last 3 years we've had 4 or 5. I think we're approaching our 6th cohort that graduated with 100% pass rate. So, but we can't say specifically for the MEPN program simply because we haven't had any graduates. Great, yeah. All right, Rihanna, you had a question?
Yes. Hey, my name is Brianna Green. It's kind of based on how she said about the recommendations in the first. I know I am taking summer classes that are a part of the prereqs. So I wanted to know, should I kind of wait until, I know the classes will be done like early August. Should I try to wait until like those grades are in to submit my application, have everything in order, and then submit as soon as then? Or should I, try to do it earlier, even though that those grades are pending?
Right, great question. What I would say is get your application ready. When you've got everything except your final transcript available, go ahead and submit your application at that point. And then once your grades are final and you can have your final transcript submitted, we'll add that to your application. And at that point, everything else will be completed and we can forward it on. So don't wait till your final grades are in. Get everything else in. That way, as soon as your final transcript arrives, at that point, your application will be complete.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. There was an online question here. Do all prerequisite courses need to be completed prior to the September 1st application deadline? We would really prefer that all courses be completed prior to the September 1 deadline. If you've got a situation where perhaps that's not going to be a possibility, please let us know and we will kind of review your situation and see if that's an option. But we really want to see everyone have graduated and completed all the prerequisites prior to the deadline. All right. I see that Emily's got her hand up for a question.
Hi, my name is Emily Palfrey. I was just wondering what the turnaround time is after submitting an application.
Great question. We will not make any admission decisions until after the application deadline. So even if you were to have everything completed and submitted the first week in May, you're not going to get a decision until after the September 1st deadline, because what we want to do is we want to review the entire pool of applicants and pick out the 32 strongest students that we feel can be most successful in the program. Now, again, do encourage you to submit your application earlier rather than later. That way, if there are any outstanding items, you still have time to get them in. But after the September 1st deadline, it's a couple factors that come into play. Typically, admission decisions are made 4 to 6 weeks after the deadline, but that's the assumption that your application is complete and ready for review. There's some other factors that come into play, such as time of the semester. There's certain times of the semester that are just real busy. For example, right now, this is final exam week for students, and faculty members simply wouldn't have time this week to review applications and give you a decision. Some of it's based on when the graduate school, how quickly they can turn around applications, get them processed and out to the departments, how quickly they can submit and process the admissions decisions. So,
Okay. And then I was just wondering if the program is also going to consider fall enrollment in the future, or if it's just strictly spring.
There's a possibility. Right now, there is no specific plan for that. I can say based on the interest, I think there's a good likelihood that we may get that route, but it would probably be a year or two, maybe 3 years. We'd have to have some additional infrastructure in place, like maybe some more faculty. We'd have to offer additional classes, things of that nature. So, okay. I see Andrew's got his hand up.
Yes, wasn't prepared. So in trying to apply to multiple schools, there are requirements all over the place as far as prereqs. One of the prereqs for another school is pathophysiology. I see that's a part of the curriculum. Does there exist any transfer in, provided a syllabi is provided, or how does that work?
Well, I have to say I'm shocked that anatomy and physiology is required as a prereq, but Dr. Harris, I'll let you address that.
Sure. So we cannot take any transfers of nursing courses. All of our NURS courses are required and they have to be completed through us. So our pathophysiology is nursing specific. It's not, I'm sure there is a pathophysiology course somewhere else in the university, but ours is specific to nursing. So you wouldn't be able to transfer that in, but I'm telling you, it'd be really helpful if somebody had a course like that coming in to take that course prior to taking that course. It is not a requirement. It is actually a requirement of our program, both at the entry level, traditional entry level, BSN, and at the tradition at our MSN, MEPN level entry.
Thank you.
Okay. Real quickly, I see it's 1 o'clock right now. So if people need to log off and do something else, that's fine. Remember, we will be sending a copy of this recording to everyone either by the end of the day or first thing in the morning. If for some reason you don't get it, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll make sure you do get a copy. We'll be willing to stay in a few more minutes to answer any additional questions that are out there. I see there's one in the chat box. Hold on just a second. Are graduates from direct entry program eligible to apply for DNP or postgraduate certificates without having a BS in nursing? Absolutely. Yes, if you know, depending on the program, there's some programs that have BSN entry DNP, some programs have MSN entry DNP. As long as you've got a nursing degree, you should be eligible. Also for some PhD programs, as long as you have a nursing degree, whether it's BSN, MSN, whatever, you're fine there. Also, as Dr. Harris said earlier, as far as the postmaster certificate, that's fine as long as you've got a master's in science, in nursing, then you'd be eligible for others. And actually that would speed up, as opposed to getting another full MSN degree, doing the postmaster certificate would be a little bit quicker way of getting the NP certification.
Some of the courses overlap. So you would have taken some courses like nursing research, that is the same graduate level course that our NP students take.
Fine. Okay. Brittany's got a question. Go ahead, Brittany.
I had a question about if I've previously taken a nursing classes at a different program, but I'm not able to complete it, and would I still be eligible for this program? Not because, like, if I have a withdrawal on a class, but I choose not to finish that program because I'm going to be moving.
Sure, Brittany, I'll take that question. You're eligible to, as long as you have a bachelor's degree, you are eligible for this program. I will tell you, if you did successfully complete any nursing courses in that program, those will not transfer. So let's say you've already taken foundations for nursing somewhere else, you would retake foundations for nursing.
I understand. I understand you said that. I do have a previous bachelor's before I ever started nursing year, in something totally different, non-nursing related. But I didn't know if I did complete the courses, because I was all the way up to almost 4th semester. But I understand I would have to redo the classes, but it won't go against me because I've already taken nursing classes.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
In fact, we have a couple people in our program right now who did start in bachelor's programs and then thought, well, I think the master's will be it. There wasn't an option before for them.
Yeah.
The option came available. They did start this program and are doing fine. They have obviously repeated some courses, but they are doing well.
Yeah, I realized I'll have to repeat, which kind of stinks, but at least I'll know the material, I guess.
Right. You have a
Thank
strong
you.
foundation.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Vicky, you've got a question. Vicky Shambo?
I wanted to know for the application, are there any like do's and don'ts for like the goal/personal statement section?
I think she wanted do's and don'ts for the personal statement.
Do's and don'ts. Well, there's a specific prompt, so I'd make sure you address that. You know, again, do make sure you indicate why you want to get the degree. If you've done any specific, either good things or bad things, either in your personal or in your academic background, I'd say mention that. I would say if you've got any work experience in a healthcare setting, make sure you address that. We do ask you keep it to 2 pages. You know, don't use 6-point font, don't use 25-point font, you know, use basic 11 or 12-point font. Dr. Harris, anything else you want to add to that?
Really quickly, I guess the personal statement is an opportunity for the faculty who are reviewing your application to get to know you, and also evaluate, like, do you have professional writing? So is the writing appropriate? And then also, you know, why do they want to be a nurse? Is there anything that happened? Like, let's say undergraduate degree was kind of, you know, I mean, I just made it through. Thank you, Lordy. This is what happened. I had whatever happened to me. Sometimes explaining those situations is very helpful for context. So like, oh, but then I noticed they just started doing really well. So I think faculty use, in particular, having served on an admission committee prior, we use that as an opportunity to get to know you. So just saying, I want to be a nurse because my grandma was a nurse and da da da. Well, that might be part of your story, but if that's the whole personal statement, we see a lot of those. So we really would rather know, you know, what kind of things that would make you an excellent person to be a nurse, what kind of things that you're going to bring creatively. That's the one thing we love about this program, is that everybody has different backgrounds. Everybody has different knowledge bases. Somebody from psychology, somebody from public health, somebody from music brings all these things that they have learned in their foundational education together to think about new ideas and be creative about how we can improve healthcare. And the thing I love is that it's different than somebody like me who had bachelor's in nursing, master's in nursing, PhD in nursing. I have a nursing thought. Well, sometimes I'm like, I never thought about it that way, when I have students who have degrees from other ways. And it's really important, I think, for our profession as well.
And just to kind of complement that, you know, as we mentioned earlier, the majority of the students do have a degree in a science field, public health, biology, chemistry, exercise science, something like that. But we've also got some students that are, you know, masters in fine arts. I think film and theater is one student at a master's. So we've got someone who's got a degree in music education. So again, they have different perspectives, and that's kind of neat that they can share those perspectives. So again, with your personal statement, explain to us why you're an excellent candidate for the program and what makes you stand out and unique. So good. All right. Other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Haley Benninger. I was just going to reiterate on the fact I'll have all of my prereqs done. Well, I already have them done, but I will be graduating in December. Am I still able to apply and be accepted with all of my prereqs being done?
Where are you currently enrolled in school, Haley?
USC.
We've kind of made the exception for USC students. If you'll be graduating December, that we'll consider USC students as long as you got your prereqs completed. For other students, we would really like everyone to have graduated and completed the prerequisites by the application deadlines, September 1st. If you're someone who, you know, either isn't going to graduate or isn't going to complete all the prerequisites by that deadline, reach out to us. There may be a unique situation that we can deal with, but you know, as a general rule, we're going to say most people need to have the prerequisites and graduate by that deadline.
Okay, and do you want me to email y'all and just like let you know so that you have it like on file that I'll be graduating in December?
Oh, I'm sure we'll be talking many times between now and then. So as long as you get your application submitted, you'll be fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank y'all.
All right. We've got time for about one or two more questions. While we're doing that, I just wanted to let everyone know my contact information is there. You should all already have it, but if you have any other follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Be happy to answer any additional questions you have. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Not a question, but a thank you. This was extremely helpful. It really addressed and avoided a lot of the back and forth with email, although I love that. Seeing the faces, it really helped. So thank you.
Well, first of all, Andrew, yes, it is nice to finally put faces with names. A lot of people I've been communicating with for a while, so do like that. I'm glad you found this helpful. So thank you for everyone's participation today. Good. There was one additional question submitted on the chat. When can we know if we get to admitted and enroll in the program? Again, no decisions will be made prior to the application deadline. Again, the application deadline is September 1st. Typically, decisions are turned around in about 4 to 6 weeks. So, that could be mid-October. By late October, you should certainly know your status, which should still give you, 2 full months to get any final things in that you need to do, BLS certification, prepare for the start of the program, that sort of thing. So, all right. Any closing questions? It looks like Vicki has her hand up one more time.
Oh no, I don't know why the hand raised.
Okay, all right.
I'm good.
No worries. Christina, were you going to ask a question?
Yeah, Christina Gant. I just had a quick question. Is there any questions that you've received in like past information sessions that we may have not touched on, or topics that you get like 6 emails a week about, or anything like that?
Yes, great question. So I'm really surprised it hasn't come up, and I'm going to let Dr. Harris answer this question. The question is, do we have to find our own clinicals?
Oh, yes. So you must feel those questions and I don't see them. But yes, I can answer that for sure. You do not find your own clinicals for this program. A lot of that comes out of, I think that question stems from a lot of the FNP programs or master's level programs for family nurse practitioners or any kind of nurse practitioner program. Those you do usually have to find your own clinical site. So with this program, when you start in your clinicals, you start as a clinical group. So you'll be assigned a group when you register of usually between 6 and 8 students. It rotates each semester and maybe each course. So you're not always with the same students, but you probably will have some of the same students because we're a really small group, about 32 students in your clinical group at some point in time. And then at the end, you move to preceptor, and that'll be 1-to-1. And in the beginning, it is group 2-1 clinical instructor. And so you won't have to worry about that. You are assigned your clinical, the whole program, including when you're 1-to-1 with the preceptor. Because we have to have those preceptors approved by the board of nursing and by the hospital facilities that they are eligible to be a preceptor.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for participating today. Dr. Harris, any closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, I was about to say no, but I'm really excited to see you guys are interested. Hopefully, we will see some of your applications come through at the end in September, and that faculty are able to meet. We have not planned our meetings for reviewing applications yet, but we'll start looking at that in August, and hopefully we'll get to see some of you in January.
Does the portal open at midnight on May the 1st?
I'm not sure if it'll open on midnight of May 1st or midnight of April 30th, but you should be able to access it either, May 1st or the next day. And sometimes they actually will open it a day early. So I know I had to just submit some modifications to the application. So, but certainly by Monday morning, it'll be available. So, All right, well, again, thank you all, everyone, for participating today. Great discussion, great questions. Do remember the applications open this weekend. We will be watching for your applications. Look forward to communicating with you throughout the process. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact either one of us at any point, and we'll be watching for your applications. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.